Hi everyone. Today I'm talking to the amazing Frances Bedford, and Frances is running as an independent in the seat of Florey. So I will let Frances say a quick hello, introduce herself, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about the upcoming election. Hi, Frances.
Hi, thanks for letting me be with you this morning. And first of all, congratulations on the great speech at the rally the other day. That was fantastic. So Florey is under the new boundaries, the suburbs of Ingle Farm, Paraka, Para Hills West, and bits of Para Vista, and most of Mawson Lakes. So the reason I'm running in Florey is it's a safe seat, and I think safe seats are a bad thing. So we need to get together, make sure our voices are listened to, and we get some action. And I've got to say, I've been out of public life for 4 years since the last election. I was pretty well pooped when I retired, so it took me a couple of years to get some energy back. And I was staggered to see that not much has changed since the last time I paid attention. And some of the things that you said in your speech on the weekend really moved me and shocked me. And it's pretty obvious we need to start listening to the people on the ground and doing things differently, because to do things the same way is the recipe of madness if we're expecting a different outcome. So I'm listening.
Yep. So when we sort of connected, I guess last time that you were in Parliament, and you you left when just after we had the independent inquiry into foster and kinship care moved through Parliament. That was sort of about to take place, roll out, and there was a change of government. And so you were involved and highly supportive of the inquiry and all that work that was occurring. And now you're back.
Well, I'm not back yet, but I have to get
Well, you're running.
going. What's really important is we get to talk about these things and amplify the community's expectations, because the people who aren't personally involved in foster care or kinship care or have anything to do with the Child Protection Office, for instance, they don't actually understand what's going on. So it's really important that we talk about what's happening, because if we don't, there's no way things are going to change, because the government seems to be in a bit of a holding pattern. And I don't understand that. And as you said, I left or was forced out before the new bill was put through, and that was pretty tough to watch. So I can only imagine what it's like to live with.
And all the hard work that the carers and
Mm.
other stakeholders and even birth parents were on board, knowing that we were advocating for change that would impact the entire community. They weren't just all things that would benefit carers.
No.
So it was a lot of hard work and a lot of taxpayers' money.
Well, that seems to be the thing that a lot of people forget. And while it's all very well to argue, value for dollar, blah blah, it's also about the triple bottom line of making sure that we aren't crushing people and ignoring the needs of children in the process of being efficient. I hate the word efficient, because that doesn't take into account the sorts of things that we really need to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think taxpayers begrudge funding something but when they suddenly hear that it's not working and they've been funding something for so many years when so many people have asked for, like 2 decades, I guess, in my experience, for change,
Mm.
and that
Yeah.
it's not happening.
Well, I first probably got involved when grandparents for grandchildren was being formed all those years ago, and helped to I think I actually paid to incorporate them in the early days, because they didn't have any money of their own, and we made sure John Rao met with them. And it's really hard in Parliament to keep your eye on all the balls, and that's why it's really important that we have people like you in the Carer Project telling us what's going on, so we can run the ruler over what's actually happening and listen to both sides of the story. So it's really obvious that unless we do that work and look after children 0 to 5, 0 to 8, or however long they need assistance to become resilient, if they're not in an ideal home to start with, or aren't lucky enough to find a placement that really is good for them and good for everybody, that in the end, their lives become really difficult, and society and the community has to deal with someone who's just not coping. And that's a ridiculous place to be when it's so much easier to make sure that we don't have that problem in the first place.
And that, of course, impacts on generations to come too.
Oh, well,
Doesn't it? Has that roll-on effect? Yeah.
more so than ever. I mean, I've been helping a young offender for about, I don't know, 20 years, and I'm really worried that if we don't get him back on the rails, his now 16-year-old son has an example that's not going to be ideal. I mean, I want more than ever to be able to assist where I can one-on-one, and make sure my own children are smart, my own grandchildren don't fall into a crack. And being a parent, we all know the old saying about it takes a village, and it's kind of true, isn't it? I mean, we really need to look after each other as we look after the young people coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we caught up at a forum, a community forum a couple of weeks ago. It was about poverty, anti-poverty and the homelessness. Um, that in itself was an experience, listening to those speakers talking about the issues from within the communities and people that they were trying to represent and support. And it was heartbreaking, wasn't it?
Well, it was, and the worst part was it was the same stuff I was hearing 30 years ago. I don't know what's happened in the middle, but the answer is not very much. And I spoke to you about my little suffragist from Adelaide, Muriel Matters. She ran in 1924 in Britain in the House of Commons on a platform of housing for all, and we're still talking about that here 100 years later. What I really want to see is some sort of publicly accessible list of housing trust properties that are vacant and for what reason. It's great that the government's announced a 300 home over 4 years, though, unfortunately, revamp of properties. But that doesn't address the maintenance issue. We know that there's lots of problems because lots of housing trust houses are now significantly older. And I was at Ingle Farm the other day and just happened to overhear someone talking to the person they were having coffee with, saying that they've been waiting 16 days for their hot water service to be looked after. Now, if you've got kids, you can't really cope. I mean, I know it might have been hot weather, but you really need warm water, hot water to do dishes and washing, and that's just not acceptable. So if there's that sort of lag, we have to address that and find out what the problem is behind all of that. So, okay, we're going to refurbish 300 homes, but do we have the tradespeople to do that work? Let alone the budget? Do we have the tradespeople? So I'm not sure which part of government isn't talking to what other part, but they're very big with their technical high schools. I'd like to see some of that technical expertise that they're bringing the kids up with come out into the suburbs to look at these projects to get to what we can get going fast, because we can't wait 4 years.
No. I remember growing up when they had the public housing, the housing trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was a lot of the community living in those homes. They would have, say, monthly inspections, or they would get to put in and request the maintenance. People would turn up, get the job done, and then it rolled out into some of those people then had opportunity to purchase those homes.
That's right. And there's
Directly.
teams need to run beside each other. Absolutely about that. But I think once we began to outsource things like that, for instance, I know at schools, if you wanted to change a light globe in a classroom, you just rang the maintenance man in the school and he came and changed it. Well, now it's like 3 sets of paperwork and later. And then they come with the wrong ladder because the ceiling's like 12 foot, not 6 foot. So, I mean, nuts, completely nuts.
Yeah, no common sense.
No.
Uh,
So to send 3 lots of paperwork and get 2 men out, it's going to cost more. And okay, you might not have a residential maintenance man in every school, but the man might be responsible for 2 schools and he might help with the groundsman or something. There's got to be a better way of doing what we're doing, because outsourcing has not helped.
no, I agree. What are you hearing in your community? Is the housing a big factor? Is it health, or is it
Well,
Cost of living, everything.
well, cost of living is such an all-embracing sort of subject, isn't it? We're now seeing petrol's gone up 40, 50 cents a litre overnight because of stupidity elsewhere. And we have the Treasurer on radio this morning saying we're not going to run out of petrol as long as the war ends and people don't panic buy. Well, hello, that's happening, and that's not very comforting. We need a stronger reassurance than that. We need people to understand that if we panic buy petrol, buses in the country, I understand, can't take kids to school this week because there's no diesel. Well, I would have liked the government to have made an announcement about diesel being taken out to the country immediately so those kids can go to school. But I haven't heard that yet. Maybe it's coming. I don't know. But I mean, the timing is terrible because this is the week before the election. They don't want to be sidetracked by stuff like that. I get it, but unfortunately, it's happened, and we need to have things under control. We don't need people queuing up for panic buying petrol. It'd be great if it was a week later, but it's this week, so we have to address it this week, and we have those messages of reassurance, just as we have to do with housing. If I was on the list and I had 3 kids and I had mold in my bathroom, I'd be wanting to know when my bathroom was going to be fixed up. We know that mold's a terrible thing to live with. If I wasn't even in a house, if I was in a car and therefore considered not at risk because I've got a car to sleep in, I'd want to know. And as was said at that seminar we were at, when COVID came, everyone had a house immediately. They were housed. So we know it can be done. So we know it's got to be a different sort of system that looks at how we deal with the unmet need. And again, there has to be public accessible lists showing us what's around. And I do think we have to look at some form of capping of rents because it's just like petrol. You can't have it going up to the point where you can't afford it, which means you have to leave the property, which means you're back on the street, and then the next person who comes in has to pay the higher rate. I understand landlords have commitments and expenditure to meet, but it doesn't help anyone if there's a place that's empty that could be housing someone.
Yeah, I think it also comes back to this spending, the increasing of interest rates, which then has a roll-on effect to the landlords, which then gets passed on. Some landlords are fair, some aren't, and will take advantage.
Yeah.
And it's that everything kind of comes back to a cycle, doesn't it? And,
Yeah.
and, and the petrol, a couple of days ago, as soon as those bombs were dropped, the media straight away they went straight to the petrol supplies. They were the ones that put the fear into the community. They drive the people going in, mass buying petrol. The cost goes up. Now you're saying kids can't get to school. I had the same conversation with one of my kids who works up in the hills around, gee, you're going to have to be careful with fuel now. And they have to get to their job in the hills.
Mm.
They work in healthcare, and we're saying, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe government's going to have to put on some community buses if they want their people to get to where they need to go, which is just like what you're saying in regards to getting kids to school.
Well, if there's no need for panic buying and there is enough petrol, then they should be moving the diesel out to the country so the school buses can run.
Mhm.
Because that means the bus drivers employed, that means the kids are getting out, that means the community is seeing each other every day and learning, as we know, one-on-one is much better than Zooming. We all got through COVID, I know, but we don't have to do that now if we don't have to. So I'd be liking to hear some sort of an announcement saying that it doesn't depend on the war ending because only 20% of the world's oil comes through the Straits of Hormuz. It comes from Southeast Asia for us. So they're the sorts of things that we need to know, and it needs to be reinforced for us. As long as we get the truth, we can kind of cope. But if you're only getting like half truths, it's not really helpful.
And people don't believe it. If they don't trust that they're getting the full information and they think government or anybody's hiding something,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to listen because they're not trusting.
No, and the other thing which you've just said is they're not being heard or listened to. So it's all very well to be told there's no need to panic buy,
Yeah.
but we know the reason why there's no need to panic buy. I mean, the reason there's no buy is really the petrol's going to be needed for trucks to get around the countryside to get the goods that we want to go and purchase at the supermarket into the
Yeah.
super. So it's all falling on, and we kind of had a bit of a dress rehearsal with COVID, and eventually it all settled down. But you think we would have learnt how to cope with that from the beginning?
Well, again, I think the media has a strong play to part, and they can either cause a positive
Mm.
effect or a negative impact.
Well, I can't get any coverage for the election because I'm an independent. And if I get something, all the other independents will want it. Well,
Well, shouldn't they? Shouldn't everybody get fair coverage?
well, not even the smaller parties are getting covered because I mean, in my electorate, there's 8 parties running, and me as the independent. So we all know Labor, Liberal, Green. We've all heard of One Nation and Fair Go, which is split from One Nation. But then there are 3 other family first, United Australia Voice and Australian Family Party. No one knows anything about those parties. So they're not getting any coverage either. So as you say, the media is really doing us a disservice because they're just paying attention to the major parties.
Yeah. And of course, that helps guide outcomes, doesn't it?
Well, same outcomes.
Yes.
Be really interested to hear what you think about community social workers being placed in the community to be there before things escalate to horrible levels. And I don't know if you ever heard about the Mother Carer project that was part of the Lyle McEwen birthing unit, where they trained up unemployed people through TAFE, not to be midwives or nurses or doctors, but to go in and be in the home 3 hours a day to help with hands-on stuff and to then notice if there were problems and then notify the correct people. And that's something that I think might actually work for families so that we can prevent separations in the first place and to make sure that there's successful placements, even kinship placements or whatever. Something we've got to do something different, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
what that sort of
Yeah.
what along the lines of or
And that's pretty much what myself and other carers, families, advocates are all calling for, because we get told what a government's doing.
mm,
We keep trying to tell them here are our solutions based on our lived experience, and we're telling you what you can do to make things better. So people are saying, well, there's no change, there's no change. And then government goes, oh, yes, there is, because we gave this for this or we gave that for that. It's not about there's no change, there's no improvement. There's no
mm.
improvement because they're doing what they want to do and they're ignoring what we're all asking for and saying that the community needs. And even when they talk about early intervention and that family preservation type stuff from the onset, it still isn't the support that people are asking for. They're doing it to families. They're not doing what people are saying. And for some families, they're not abusive, they're not on drugs, they've hit tough times. And for some families, maybe all they do need is someone going in every day or every couple of days for a few hours and helping them just to find themselves again, get on top of things, get the house cleaned up, tidy up the yard, give somebody a hand with some job applications. That's true support.
Well, that's exactly what Mother Carers was. And the women who were involved in that were young women who did the TAFE course and they had been unemployed and they then went on to get employment. It's something I think that's really important. I know when my stepmother was in aged care in Victoria, her daughter, my stepsister, couldn't get in every day. And that was around the time that Julia Gillard took away the pension for women with children over 8. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if they could go into a nursing home for 3 hours a day, make sure the teeth are in, they've had a meal, their clothes are on, and they could ring the daughter-in-law and say, your mum's okay today, or you need to come in this afternoon, blah, blah, blah. No one wants to talk about putting two things together that match. They're still trying to stick that square peg in the round hole rather than meeting up the Lego blocks that actually join each other. And we've got to work out more ways, I think, to make that happen. And the real problem there, of course, is that federal doesn't want to talk to state, and that's got to stop. I had a lady this morning ring me to tell me that the Ingle Farm 24-hour emergency care doctor doesn't bulk bill. for emergency visits. Well, that's no good to her. She can't pay. She hasn't got any money. So she had to go to the hospital. Well, she didn't know for a start, doesn't have access to a computer, can't get there by car or bus. So, hospital. So at least tell us the truth. Let us know what's going on. Everyone, it's like having a bushfire plan, isn't it? Really, you got to know when you're sick. You've got to know where to go when you need extra care 24 hours. And she's a diabetic and had to have help straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've spoken quite a bit in the carer community and hence advocating for respite, for example,
Yeah,
respite for carers. Now, there's this one size fits all model of you'll get a weekend a month and your kids have to leave the house and go to stay in somebody else's house for a weekend, and most carers are not getting that. I know carers that have never had a respite or haven't had it in years. But then when I started looking at it and thinking, well, how can we sort this out? Because they cannot recruit the carers they need, whether it be long term or respite or short term. And most children in families do not want to go and
when
live
you
with a stranger for a weekend. It's not, and I don't believe that that's conducive in teaching kids safety either, is that you just, all strangers are suddenly safe because you've got to go stay with them. But we were sort of I've always really engaged with the carer community and spoken to carers and pulled these things out and saying, so okay, for you, what would respite look like? And someone said, well, even a babysitter for a day, just so my partner and I can escape for a day and then have a meal and go to a show, but the kids are at home in our house.
that's right. And they're in their surroundings, they know their routine, and the
Exactly.
knows the routine too, because you
Yeah.
tell on the weekend I was speaking to a carer and she was saying to get respite, I think it was 300 and something dollars from she had to pay, or but if she got it through the NDIS, which her child or the child in question was entitled to, it was $6,000 off her NDIS account. And I thought, that's like the old days when you had an accident on the way to work. The same X-ray would cost 3 times as much because it was a job that had insurance involved in it. We start looking at smarter ways to do that. I mean, 6,000 is loopy.
Yeah, exactly. And there are carers who have managed to get some respite via the child's NDIS plan. And of
Mm.
course, it is done differently and costs a fortune and it's federally. But, even for a carer to have someone come into the house and stay a night, there are carers who are happy for someone to come in and stay in their home overnight,
Mm.
just so that they can have, a good 48 hours off.
Yeah,
Others have said, for us, respite's not so bad because we drop them off to, mum's, grandma's place. But the things that we're struggling with is I could just do with a cleaner once a week and
yeah.
maybe someone to do my lawn once a month. So I realized that, and myself having never used respite because for me, it was my family care for my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just lucky that I had parents that could do that. So I realized that what other people were using and needed was different to what I had. So let's pull it all together and see. So therefore, we're asking for fully funded respite for carers based on their own individual unique needs. And that is still going to save money. It's going to save money.
Because you're going to be okay, which means you're there to pick up the other,
Yeah.
whatever it is between the next time and the other. But you not being able to cope, and that means the kids aren't happy either. So nobody wins again.
Right.
They look great on the budget, but
Yep. And we retain carers because, we will spend millions of dollars on a recruitment campaign for carers. But we won't spend a fraction of that to fully support our carers to keep them. And happy carers are free advertising, and happy carers recruit new carers for free.
and and we know people have a capacity to do that. People want to be involved. I mean, in my own case, I support this little offender and his young son, and keep an eye on my own kids and my own grandkids. But we've all got the capacity to even just help a carer who's doing all that other stuff. volunteering, as we know, keeps the whole place going, and basically just making sure that we're all coping is a really important thing to do, because ultimately the system couldn't afford the breakdown that we'd be facing.
No, well, and we're already seeing it because carers are burning out,
Mm.
carers are being treated terribly. The financial burden that they are carrying for government, that they just can't cope anymore. So carers are leaving a system. Now we just cannot recruit what we need.
Mm.
And like I said in my speech on Sunday, it's about 700 children in residential care. Now,
And the debt.
yes, yeah.
So it's not time for another talk fest. I don't think that's the answer. I think we have to go, or you have to go to the table with what you know through lived experience is necessary, and government has to start listening. And even if they only adopt one or two things from what you're proposing, it's got to be better than nothing.
Well, so far I've been reaching out to as many candidates and minor parties as I can, and they're all supportive of our commitments that we've put forward. And again, some of those will benefit the entire community because it's independent oversight, independent complaints and investigation unit type, and that will serve both parents and other people that engage with the department. Um, but everybody else is willing to talk about it except for government. I'm excluded from the table. They will only talk with their specific groups. And it's always the same people at the same tables. And like you said, we don't do things differently. We're not going to get different outcomes.
So we have to take away their fear, because what are they afraid of? Are they afraid they'll be shown up that it hasn't worked and they haven't done it? Or I mean, I don't understand. I'd be looking for a solution of some kind. As I said, even if it's just one or two things, even if we just trialed the community social worker or whatever we call the thing, not like the mother carers, that provides you that 3 hours care a day during the week till you're stabilized, and then it might be, twice a week or when you need it. I mean, we know there's going to be acute need and then another level of need once we've sorted out whatever the problem is. But we've got to try something different. I don't know
Yeah.
how it all goes. We can find money for motorcycles, which I don't mind as long as everything else is under control. And I heard a great definition the other day. Um, it's a government's job to look after its citizens and ensure their prosperity and safety. And that's a bottom line, isn't it? That's like a least we can expect from our government. And then that frees us up to play a bigger part in the community, which is what we all care about in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And with so many families doing it tough,
Mm.
the increasing cost of living, all of these special events are out of reach to so many people.
Well, that's what I mean. I times everyone's running around doing WOMAD or whatever. That's just not even an option for some people. And that the other day, do you know about the group called what's it called? Play It On, I think. I heard about them at a function the other day. It's called Play It On. And this lady, it's a not for profit. She's found it. They get used sporting equipment, refurbish it all, and then sell. You can't put a kid on a soccer pitch for $1,000 if you're struggling. I mean, it's great having a $200 voucher, but that still leaves you $800 out of it.
Yeah.
And kids need sport and team games and to make those connections and feel part of the group.
Mhm.
It's just amazing that we have to keep coming up with these things, but we do.
Well, and everybody's saying about the free vouchers for this, the free money for it might be football clubs and free this and promises of this. But at the end of the day, isn't it going to be taxpayers who are going to have to somehow pay? There's no money, is there? There's debt already.
We're living on the credit card, unfortunately, and our only hope is our children, because they're be running things in a while. I mean, I've been watching this in public life since my kids were at kindy, so that's 45 years. And I was on the kindy committee, which is how I started in public life. And none of it's any different. We're all still struggling. I really think there's a need for community-based childcare, not the for-profit stuff that we're seeing, and the same with aged care. But of course, government's not responsible for that stuff anymore. They don't see a role for themselves. Well, then what are they actually doing? Are they doing roads, or are they doing um, hospitality, propping them up with major events? And I can remember international students being touted as the thing that was going to save the state. But even the bottom's falling out of that.
Yeah.
I don't see why we're building so much student accommodation when universities are going to be so much online now. I mean, I don't know that there's the actual experience on campus that kids used to have, which was the real melting pot of ideas and meeting people from all different cultures and backgrounds. And that's why it was so important to get kids who weren't from just upper class families into uni, so that we could, harness their brain power and
Yeah.
the groups that we needed them to be. And that was the international diplomacy stuff too, because kids were coming from all over the world to study at universities. Well, I'm not sure that'll be happening.
And if they're not learning together at university and they're kind of in isolation at home, learning online, how do they then know how to immerse themselves in community when they go out into the paid job?
Well, I mean, that's even a problem in itself, because jobs aren't necessarily going to, I mean, all this AI stuff, that's another frontier as well. But let's not make our horizons too broad this morning. We'll be
Yeah.
pressed by the time we're finished. But we need to be looking at the fact that humans need to have interaction, and AI isn't necessarily going to be it, is it?
No. And I think learning on the job and learning on the like doing your university. So I remember I had a family member years and years and years ago who did nursing.
Mm-hmm.
They did a lot of their training on the job.
In hospital.
Yeah, yes. And so they're already in the community, they're learning on the job, they're getting the lived experience. And I also know some younger people now who are doing similar in aged care. They're in
Mhm.
the hospital, they're doing the training, but there's only very few. There are only very few spots available. I believe we should be opening that up and getting people back in training, whether it's nursing, dentistry, all those services that we're struggling to recruit people.
Dare I say it, maintenance in housing trust
Yeah,
properties.
yes, yeah,
Exactly. So I understand why everyone thought this was going to be a much better way. I understand that governments thought outsourcing was going to be the answer, but it's not.
mm,
My experience, it on its own hasn't been.
yeah, and it's very hard to regulate and monitor some things when we kind of palm it off.
That's true. I mean, I was talking about insurance this morning with some people. When we had the government insurance agency, there was a baseline. Now we're shopping all over the place, and really, we're no better off. I don't want to have to ring up my electricity provider, who I've been with for 50 years, to ask for a cheaper rate. I don't want to have to do that. They should give it to me. But now it's a dog eat dog thing, and that gets back to the consumer issues that I think are very important for us to address, which would also pick up things like the housing trust. But the lists have to be publicly available, because that's a way to make government accountable as well, knowing people are watching.
So, Francis, if you get elected,
Mm-hmm.
what is the first thing you want to do when you get back in there?
Well, sadly for everybody, we'd have to look at what the numbers are, because there are 47 seats in the parliament, and without getting up to the whatever happens in the upper house, because a bill has to go through two houses to become law. But there are ways to tinker at the edges through regulations and other things. And there are also ways that we can engage the community and get things going. So there are a lot of areas to look at. Your particular area, I believe you've done a lot of the work already for us to do. Um, it's going to be important to know that if the government gets through with a larger majority without much of a scare, they're going to think that everything they're doing is okay. So we have to hope that at some point things are rattled a little bit, not just in the upper house, but also in the lower house. So before, when I was in the lower house, I was responsible for looking after the independent people and ran a caucus that made sure we were fully informed. And our 5 votes were actually important to get anything through the House. But if the government already has an advantage of 12, for instance, makes it a lot harder. But it also means we have an opportunity as a community to become a bit louder about what we think are important. And I don't just mean outside on the front of the steps, I mean inside, in meetings, being present during the debates in the House. And it's really important that people understand there's a thing called a private member's bill. I can instigate a private member's bill on anything, but I'd need to have the time allotted to me in the Parliament to speak on it. And that's something that the government controls. So that's why we brought in the 10,000 physical signatures on a petition to make a petition's topic go off to a committee for review. And that review then has to be reported to the House. So it's a bit like football, unfortunately. We have to know the rules of the game to know how to influence what's going on. But it's nothing that I can do on my own. I would certainly need to be able to harness all the work that you're doing. You'd still have to go and see all the different members of Parliament. And it's a bit like the euthanasia bill or the voluntary assisted dying bill. They worked for years, pestering members of Parliament for years. And a bit like suffrage and the women getting the vote, they worked for years. But we can't wait years to get these changes. So maybe we do the two-pronged attack. We work through Parliament, and then we also work through the community in moving what we can do within the community and within the public service, because those people in the public service have to be given the confidence to know that their decisions and advice to the minister are actually things that will work.
I think like two things. So first of all, I don't think people have a great understanding of upper lower house.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go out voting for who they remember last for giving them something great, an announcement in social media. And they don't realize that it's not a personal attack on anybody, but it's more important that they have a diverse representation in both houses. Because when there's diversity in parties and independents and mix, they better represent us as people. And there's less opportunity to vote as we saw with the flawed child protection bill. All of Labor voted for that bill, despite all the stakeholders and crossbench MPs saying this bill is flawed. Now they voted for it anyway.
Well, I mean, this is why I guess I was involved with the Muriel Matters Society. Excuse me. The women originally thought that getting the vote was the answer to all their problems, but of course that's just the beginning of it. There's no point in having a vote and sending people to Parliament unless those people are listening, and then if they're in a party, unless the party is on board. So what I think is missing in our political system is the democracy in the two-party system that makes sure we do get, as you said, the diverse candidates. Because at the moment, it's not happening. To be a candidate, you either have to be around the traps, doing the job for a while and not causing any trouble, or at the last minute they pick you up and you might fall across the line and get lucky, which is what happened to me in 1997. They let me run in a seat that I had no chance of winning, and I actually fell across the line and won it. And then I was a problem forever after that because I wanted to have a say. Now, pardon me, I had a say within the Labor Party, and I often lost a vote 31-1. I mean, that's democracy. But if I couldn't convince people that some of the things I was saying were actually worthwhile, well, then, you're kind of beating your head against the wall after a while. But if candidates don't have the confidence to speak up and exercise dissent, which is part of any debating process, and you should be able to have a differing opinion without being scared about having a differing opinion. Because one of the ladies who was worried about getting a hot water service fixed in the Housing Trust was worried she's going to be in trouble for going to see her member of parliament because she hadn't been seen quickly enough. So we have to take that sort of stuff out of the system. But you're right, if people don't understand how it all works, it's pretty hard. And I'm more than happy to come anywhere to help explain all of that to people. It's not about, I know I'm running at the moment, but I won't always be. But
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to explain how the rules work and then how we can all work about how we might go about changing things. Because it is a bit like turning the Titanic around. It's pretty hard at the moment.
Yeah, and most people don't want to talk about politics because they think it's just boring. We don't want to talk about it. But when you start having a conversation with them and whatever their issue is, and you say to them, well, actually, you know where that starts from, don't you? And they'll be like, where? And you'll say Parliament. And they go, what? You're like, well, that's where that particular law was made. And what you're suffering is because of the law that's in place. And then once you start breaking it down a bit more and talking about how what is the only way to change that? It is to get more diversity in voting
There's
in Parliament.
politics in everywhere, every sporting club, every indie committee, every whatever you want to think about. People have differing opinions, but that shouldn't be um, resolved by warfare, which is what we see in the world. We should be able to talk things through and do the best possible thing for the greatest number of people. That's what democracy is about. And so there shouldn't be fear or favour, but there should also be, as you've said, recognition of the fact that something's not working and not be embarrassed by saying, oh, well, that hasn't worked. Let's have a go at something else because we
Yeah.
need to do something else if it's not working.
And we need to take the fear out of members of parliament that won't vote against other members in their parties. Like people told me in Labor that they didn't even read the bill. They had to vote for it. And I don't get that because I won't vote for something that I know isn't going to represent my community.
Yeah. Well, you can try and amend all these things. I mean, but you've got to get that through the process of caucus in the first place. And that's why private members' bills, I mean, I was able to get three through Parliament in my time, one in within the party, and then two when I was no longer in the party. But you still got to get the time on the floor of the House to debate it. And often because it was an idea that I had, people didn't want to do it. And that's fine. I don't care who does it as long as it gets done. I mean,
Yeah.
I fix the price of petrol for 24 hours, not 30 minutes. Petrol at the moment can change every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know any other commodity changes every 30 minutes or how that can work because it's in the ground already, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
so it's about trying to get more people interested in the process. We turned people off when we started direct mail in the 1980s. And it is hard work talking to people one on one about whatever their individual issue might be. But it's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
You've got to be available, you've got to talk with people, understand their perspective, say why you can't do something that they've asked you to do. And about the only thing I'm not prepared to look at is the death penalty. I think it's abhorrent and I wouldn't support it under any circumstances. And you could get rid of me in the next 4 years if you didn't like my opinion on it. But I just think it's a horrible thing.
Mm. I think the other thing that needs to somehow be taken away is I heard from quite a few people who work within the public sector in
Mm-hmm.
regards to the rally on the weekend who said that they really wanted to go, but they were afraid that they would lose their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And some did turn up, and likewise with carers. But how do we hold government departments accountable and ministers accountable when staff or people that sit on their groups, their boards, even though they're meant to be representing and caring for the community, they're all gagged. They sign gag orders. And then they're even afraid to turn up at a rally. And then some are even afraid to vote in the way they want to vote in case someone finds out how they voted.
Well,
Isn't that's bullying, isn't it?
of course it is. That's why we have the secret ballot. That's only good. Is a secret ballot. Sometimes I probably shouldn't say this, but sometimes within the Labor Party, they have show and tell. So you've got to show the person beside you what you've done to hold the discipline together in something that might be contentious. Um, that's not how it's supposed to be. A show of hands is never going to be good enough. We all know where that leads, and it is that fear of retribution that's a problem, and that's one of the things that society has to look at. And it's a bit like transition. Transitions because transition something people have to manage, and it's a bit like oil or renewable power. We know it's the way of the future. It's only going to work if we're able to transition so that one company isn't bankrupted completely while the other one cleans up altogether. And it's the same with any policy we might want to introduce with the department or with caring. It's about doing it. It's called hasten slowly, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to be prepared to try it. If you don't try it, well, just saying, oh, no, that's not going to work, you should be prepared to try something every 12 months.
Yeah.
There's another way you can tweak it, or if something else, I mean, it's something we've got to try. We've got to try and listen. And it only works if people feel they've been listened to. If they don't feel they've been listened to, it's going to be an issue.
And I think you get more respect if you get a premier who, like you said, they're going to go, do you know what? You're right. Nothing else has worked for decades. We still have a department in crisis. We still have too many kids being removed from families. So, you know what? We're just going to give it a go because nothing else is working. Some of you have been proposing the same thing year after year after year for 2 decades. Surely there's got to be something in the things that we've all been proposing for so long and we're backing up with really good evidence and to show the difference it would make. Like, just be the champion that says, you know what, yeah, we're going to give it a go. And if it doesn't work, we can't be any worse off.
You've actually had a go at it, or if it didn't work that particular way, you might think, oh well, we could try this as well. There might be another way to do it, but
Yeah.
really what we're doing isn't working. The numbers are growing. Even if I could draw a line and say, right, from today on, there's not going to be a child in resi care. From now on, not happening. I can't even do that.
No, no. And it's not even just the foster care sector. It's the ramping, it's the health services, it's the mental health services, the farmers. It's kind of a pattern of behavior, I think. And it's people that just they just don't want to give in. They don't want to shift. They don't want to try something alternative and work together. Why can't Parliament work together?
Well, it's not designed to. It's an adversarial system, and it's not just. But that doesn't mean it can't.
Mhm.
And we've all known for years that being in a region rather than even like rural rather than remote,
Yeah.
remote people get bugger all. Our lives depend on being able to transit through those places to go on all the holidays we go on. So we need to have petrol stations throughout the network of highways. We need to have safe roads. Now, that's another thing that people talk about all the time, but the network of roads in Australia is enormous. I'm not sure that every penny that's raised by petrol excise goes into road repair, nor am I sure every dollar that goes into registration goes into roads and whatnot. So then we have to adjust our driving. People don't seem to want to understand there are two ways to go about this. And we've seen with the road toll this weekend, I don't know if anyone died yesterday, but 3 people died on one day. The road toll this year seems to be much lower than it was last year, and less motorcyclists seem to be being killed this year. So it's something we've got to talk about all the time. We don't talk about the number of people who die on the road as much as we used to. We certainly don't have a running total on the number of women killed by their domestic partners. We don't have a running total of the number of kids who are looking for care. We don't even have a publicly accessible list of all the housing trust properties that are vacant waiting for repair before they can be inhabited. These are the sorts of things that keep us all on our toes as government. And if we're going to outsource stuff, then are we just paying people to observe what's going on in the outsourced offices rather than having those people on the ground doing something that's worthwhile. I mean, people used to argue that the public service was useless. We used to have half our family worked in the public service. They weren't useless people. So what was wrong with the public service that it didn't work? I mean, how does that happen?
And
I
I
don't.
think the more things that you outsource to NGOs and other providers, the more money is getting sent off to provide a service than what it could have been back here at government. Because those people all want to make their buck out of the buck of the money as well. They're not doing it for nothing. So their goal is to make as much money as possible to keep recruiting staff, grow their programs, get new projects. It's self-serving because that's the business, really.
Well, every time a new contract's leased or let, to me, that just proves they're making it harder and harder and harder to get the contract, which means you're cutting costs, which means you're not going to provide a good service. So even if there was just like one government agency running something in every area, it's sort of like a benchmark, rather than us sitting down at our computers after hours comparing 19 different providers for whatever. And don't even get me started on triple O not working. I mean, how has that been allowed to happen? I don't get that at all.
No, and that has such an impact on not just the families and the people calling, but our poor paramedics,
Mm.
mental health of our paramedics, and them knowing that even when they're ramped at a hospital, that there are people ringing needing their service, and that's what they want to do. They want to provide the service. So the impact on our providers, the paramedics, even the police, our emergency service people, I don't think we look after them well enough either.
Of course we don't. Did I tell you the story about the guy who had the heart attack and the ambulance came and they said to him, ring a taxi? You
So,
get in faster. Don't go with us. Take a taxi.
yeah,
Advice, I suppose, but not much help, is it?
no.
So
And
clearly, we've got to be honest with each other. We've got to look at how we can tweak things a bit better. And um, I don't know if I said there's a $6 million promise out to the Adelaide Soccer Club. Great for soccer. I'm not saying it's not. But there's not been one single project that I'm aware of in my electorate of Florey that's had money announced for it this whole election. Well, and that's because it's a safe seat. Well, that's not working.
yeah, my electorate's much the same. It's a safe
Mm.
seat, and the community doesn't realise, like, don't vote for who you think's favourite and who appears good on social media. Have a look at what have we all received in this last 4 years. Has the member been accessible? Have they responded to emails? Have they agreed to meet? Do they get back to you? Or if you want more for your community, vote differently and put the pressure on.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's very unlikely I can win, but if enough people put me one and two somewhere else, then maybe they'll say, well, why have they voted one for her and not one for us? At some point, they've got to start thinking they can't keep holding all these seats together on a marketing campaign with a glossy brochure. It's
Yep.
it's got to be deeper than that.
Mhm. Yep. Well, in 2 weeks, we will know whether or not we have a new team of people who
Well,
perhaps will be
I think
willing.
you'll pretty much have what you've got now, but a few extras.
Well, regardless, everybody I'm speaking to is finding it really hard to access government and to have genuine engagement and genuine outcomes and
Mm.
consultations. So,
I'm sorry that's the case because it's not productive for anybody.
no, but we will see what happens. So, in the meantime, if anybody is wanting to support Frances Bedford, what do you need from people? Is there anything people can do to help you?
Well, we're putting out the how to vote cards on polling day with a group of people. We'll be trying to cover every booth. That's not the issue. We have a campaign hotline and an email presence and a website, which is francesbedford.com. Even if the only thing you do is just send in what you want, that's better than nothing, so that we know the sorts of things that you're carrying. The way I'm going about it is to tell government, well, I haven't got a single dollar for my people in Florey, and hope that they come up with something in the next 10 days, because why should we vote for them if they're not giving it? Just to say, oh, we're doing X and Y and you'll get that trickle down. We don't want the trickle down. We want the trickle up.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty. It is
Thanks.
so nice to speak to you. It's always
Yeah,
nice to speak
you.
to you.
We'll see you on the other side.
Fingers crossed. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Thanks,
Thanks for all
Francis.
you're doing. It's been great.
No
See ya.
worries. Thank you.
Bye.